Welcome to Shalom World Podcast.
Welcome to Shalom World G2G. I'm Pete Burak. Our guest is Sean Beeson. Sean is the owner and CEO of Sean Beeson Studios, where he composes soundtracks and scores for video games, projects, both secular and Catholic.
Sean Beeson is an award-winning media composer whose music is featured in hundreds of projects worldwide. As a composer, he worked on sacred and secular media projects, including games, films, trailers, ads with clients like Google, Spirit Juice, Word on Fire, Taco Bell, Disney, Sprout Studio, Wizards of the Coast, and Sony.
When I give those back to God, when I give those first fruits to God in the worship through the Mass, I think that brings joy to God.
His music is featured in film trailers, including Disney's Alice in Wonderland and Hairspray, and numerous shows on cable and network television. Most of his film credits include the popular animated short Emilia and 2 full-length Norwegian films. Sean also has featured demos for the East-West Quantum Leap Symphonic Orchestra Platinum XD sample library and post-musical instruments hybrid piano technology. As a sound designer, he has designed sounds for Google Apps and hardware devices as a UX sound designer. His piano music is streamed over 90 million times on YouTube, and his concerts have premiered globally by artists Dame Evelyn and Ballet Met Columbus. Sean's most popular video game credits include The Operational Art of War 3 and The Delicate Pearls of Pandora, among various other titles. When Sean was a kid, music made him feel something special. As time went by, it became a passion of his work with technology.
If you're doing it for the goodness of God, you're doing it with the intention of praise towards God with the gifts He's given you, it is a large gesture.
Sean strongly believes that art is something that has come from God, and we have a responsibility to nurture it and to share it with other people. The Beeson family is active in the diocese with joy-filled marriage prep and teaches natural family planning to couples. Even though Sean has had a long and flourishing career in secular music, he has been continually pushing harder into Catholic media, as it is something that gives him a more personal and spiritual fulfillment to help others further the messages and missions of Christ and the Church. Outside of his professional composing, he is a choir director, organist, and music teacher at Sacred Heart Catholic of Bethlehem School in Shelby, Ohio. Sean reveals the secret to his success: stay rooted in your faith. When God is at the center of your faith, your life flourishes.
Welcome to Shalom World G2G. Sean Beeson. Sean, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on.
No, we're really excited to talk to you, and it seems like we're coming to you live from your studio, your workspace, so let's dive right into what the Lord has called you to. Has music always been a fascination of yours, or is that something that has grown over time?
Oh, it's always been a fascination of mine. Some of my earliest memories go back to loving music and listening to music, and then it grew into recording music. So I have a little cassette tape recorder that I would hold up to the TV and record music from video games or TV shows, just so that I could carry it around with me and play it back at a later point and listen to it. And that kind of grew more into my interest in technology and music. And that grew more into me wanting to learn how to play instruments and how to write music. And that really kind of got me started in my teenage years of being interested in composition, being interested in music, and being interested in technology, which was really starting to enter a really interesting phase. This was in the mid-90s. Technology was really starting to boom. So I found myself at kind of an interesting spot where I was interested in music, sound, technology, kind of all at the same time. And that's where I got started, was in my preteen years, writing music, recording music, creating music. And it all kind of was nurtured in the church. So as soon as I was able to actually play the piano, my mom insisted that I accompany her. She was a cantor at our local Catholic church, our parish. And she insisted that I play for her, and I begrudgingly did. But that is something that has stayed with me my whole life, is being a 14-year-old, playing for masses, and now being 36, and I still play for masses. And it's been such a joy in my life, and it's been such a benefit to my career and my musicality to be playing for masses, and it's really enhanced everything that I do with my music.
That's very cool. Now, you mentioned that your mom, you said somewhat begrudgingly on your part, but she encouraged you, forced you, asked you, whatever you want to call it, to accompany her as she sang at Mass. How did that experience of playing at Mass translate into a lived relationship with Jesus? What was the journey like of not just being dragged to Mass, but getting to the point where you really believe this and that you've come into a relationship with God?
Yeah. When you're 14 years old and your mom says, I want you to play for me so I can sing, I think a lot of 14-year-old boys would be a bit hesitant to agree to that, especially when you have some of your peers that are also in the congregation. But I found that what I was doing was bringing joy to my mother and joy to my grandmother. And I was bringing joy to other people in the congregation. And I was bringing joy to the priest. And then I realized that it was bringing joy to me. It was bringing happiness to me. And I think over time that's evolved to being that I'm giving glory and joy to God. It's not that God needs to hear my music to enjoy it, but it's just the gift that I'm giving of my talents that have been given to me from God. When I give those back to God, when I give those first fruits to God in the worship through the Mass, I think that brings joy to God, and it brings joy to me, and it brings joy to people that are there worshiping as well. And it's taken a lot of my adult life to figure that out, that it's not just a gig. It's not a job. It's not just something I do because I have to. I'm doing it because it's my contribution to enriching God's kingdom.
Could you just speak a little bit more to, as you sit down to co-create with God, what does it actually look like to invite him into that process? Because, I mean, I listened to some of the music and some of the scores that you've created. I mean, some of it is for very kind of secular, temporal things, like video games and different things, which is all good, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what's the process like of saying, Lord, I need to create a trailer soundtrack for this video game. Help me with that. What does that look like for you?
Sometimes the projects are incredibly inspiring. I got to score an entire documentary produced by the Knights of Columbus about St. Joseph. It's a documentary about his life. The entire piece was so inspiring. You know, I would sit down every day that I started to compose the music, and I would ask for the intercession of St. Joseph the Worker to help me and to guide what I'm doing, you know, to really enrich the piece and not really to serve myself. And so times like that, it's very beautiful. When I'm creating stuff, it feels very fluid. I often feel that God is there, or the Spirit is there guiding what I'm doing. There's other times where I'm making footstep sounds for video games, or I'm working on slot machine sounds for projects, or things that are just very small, you know, very uninspired things. And I feel that those times I'm also praying and I'm asking for guidance, and I'm asking for grace to be able to still work on these things with a great attitude, and to really be able to incorporate God into those in any way that I can. And I think in some cases, that inspiration manifests itself in the beauty of my work. And I think other times that inspiration manifests itself in my ability to do the work. But, you know, God, I feel, is in me and is with what I'm creating, and not necessarily in It's not like God's voice is in every piece, but I feel that God is guides what I do and helps steer me to goodness in everything that I do.
For those of us who are not in the music industry, we could look at the music industry and think, wow, there's a lot of potential for pitfalls and temptation in this big, often portrayed as bad industry that is kind of the entertainment industry. Did you find that in your journey, kind of from playing with your mom in church to what you're doing now, was faith a consistent part of that, or were there ups and downs as you navigated this world of entertainment and music?
My faith has always been a very important part of my life. From when I was young, I was born Catholic, I'm a cradle Catholic, to my adult life, my faith is absolutely vital to my life and to what I do and my family. I think like most adults, there was periods of my life where I was a Catholic on coast. I went to church, I received the sacraments, I believed in them in as much as that I agreed to agree with everything that the church agrees with. But it was really through college where I began to question a lot of things. And I was fortunate and blessed enough that my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, would always have answers for a lot of the questions that I had. And she was always multiple steps ahead of me in her faith. And I think that all of these questions or the struggles that I had, she would always say, well, maybe you should read about this, or maybe you should refer to this, what this saint said, or what this theologian has said about this. And I think that in the process of being married and having a family, I've grown a lot in my faith. And about 8 years ago, my wife said to me, you do a lot of secular work. She didn't say that. She said, you do a lot of video games and, TV shows. Maybe you should look at some Catholic media. And I said, well, Catholic media, like what kind of stuff are you even talking about? And she said, well, check out Word on Fire. Check out Spirit Juice. Check out what these companies are doing, and you should reach out to them. And I said, well, they're not going to work with me. I'm a video game composer, right? They probably want somebody, I thought in my mind, that is a brilliant theologian, a great scholar. That's what they're going to want. And I reached out to him anyways, and that started the beginning of a relationship where I began to work on Catholic projects, or what I would call, a sacred secular project, something that deals directly with the faith, but is, to be used in a non-liturgical way. It's to be consumed just like you would traditional media. And that has been one of the greatest blessings of my life, for my marriage, and for my career, and for my relationship with God. Because when you get to work on, for example, a documentary about St. Joseph, it's 60 minutes long. I've probably watched it 30 times. So it really becomes a part of who you are at that point, right? You begin to listen to this and you begin to watch it, and it is ingrained in your head. And so a lot of my favorite projects are these Catholic projects, because not only am I enriching God's kingdom, but I'm kind of also enriching myself. I'm enriching my family. I'm enriching our faith life by doing these projects and working with these people.
Has there ever been a time when a project has been presented to you that you felt like directly contradicted or would have compromised your faith in some way?
I've been super fortunate and blessed that I feel a lot of projects that I've worked on are just neutral. They are things that are not offensive. They're not offensive to my faith. They're not offensive to the church. And I feel that a lot of the projects I work on tend to be ones that point towards beauty And of course, we see the beauty in a Catholic project, if it's talking about the history of the church or the goodness or the miracles of a sacrament. We see the goodness there. But I also think there's a lot of projects that seem otherwise mundane, that have a lot of beauty in them just in terms of human ingenuity and achievement and the amount of perspiration that's put into their craft, that the people maybe working on those things don't associate their gifts necessarily directly to God. But I do. When you see these teams of dozens or hundreds of people that are able to come together and achieve something that's really so far beyond the ingenuity of one person, to me, that points directly to God and his involvement in people's lives, whether or not they acknowledge God as being the author or the inspiration of what it is they're doing. And so, are there projects that have offended or are contrary to my faith and beliefs? No. But there are people on teams that I've worked with that are opposed to my faith. And they have beliefs and they conduct themselves in ways that are contrary to the goodness of people. And I try to just be a beacon to them of how we can work and how we can be good and loving towards each other. And I try not to shy away from discussions of faith, discussions of Catholicism and its importance in my life.
How have you found that your work as a composer and musician, how has that impacted your ability to be a good husband and a good father? Have you seen parallels between when you're in the studio pounding away at the keyboard, trying to figure out the next sound, and when you got poopy diapers and different things going on at home that maybe stretch your patience? Have you seen a parallel between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. I have 6 children. I feel like I have been changing diapers nonstop for 12 years. Everything that I do is a reflection of what the Father does for us, what Jesus does for us, what St. Joseph did for Jesus. I try to model my life after those men, after St. Joseph. I work hard for the goodness of my family. And if everything that I do is oriented towards God, goodness will come from it. I don't know what that goodness always is. And it doesn't mean that life is not with struggles. Just even the last couple of days, I've been working a lot of hours. And I have a sick baby and been up a lot in the middle of the night. But I come to work and I say, thank you, God, for this day. Thank you for my gifts. Help me to work and to be the best that I can be for my family and for your goodness. And that gives me power. It gives me hope that maybe when I was younger, you would have those days where you're like, I don't feel inspired. I don't feel that God is with me. I don't feel that I can do this work because I'm tired or I'm demoralized or I'm frustrated with a client who's tricky or is disrespectful to me. Now I say, God, help me to be the best that I can be. Help me to work as St. Joseph worked. Help me to be the best that I can be.
What would be your advice? What would be your encouragement that for that person who's saying, man, I love what Sean is doing. I love what the Lord's doing in his life. Why not me?
So I think there's 2 ways to answer that question. One of them is the practical answer. And I try to follow a system of P's that I've created, that when people have asked me, how do I do this? I'll say, well, you need to practice. You need to be persistent. You need to be really good at publicity. You need to be good at personal relationships. You need to have lots of prayer in your life. And so I have a set of these P's that I try to recommend to people, that those are the things that you need to do if you want to try to build a career as a musician or a composer and have it grow. I think that's the practical answer. I think the more realistic answer is that the way that we feel called to art, something like music, maybe isn't always the way that God is calling us. We may want to achieve a rock star status, or may want to achieve some high goal with music, and that's great. Like, I am all for that. But sometimes the smallest gestures for God, what we see as being small gestures, are very, very large gestures. Being involved in music at your parish, helping teach music to kids, seem like very insignificant things. But if you're doing it for the goodness of God, you're doing it with the intention of praise towards God with the gifts he's given you, it is a large gesture. Is it going to result in the career goals that you want? Who knows? I'm in a spot in my career where 20 years ago, I never thought I would have been here. But it's all of the smaller things that I've done that have made the biggest impacts with people.
Sean Beeson, thank you so much for your yes to the Lord. Thank you for your commitment to the church and to your wife and to your family. Thank you for the utilization of your gifts for all of us to benefit from. And just know that we will be praying for you, and we're so grateful that you joined us on G2G.
Thank you.
I was very inspired by the fact that we are all called to co-create with God. We've each been given gifts and talents and charisms that the Lord has placed in us to help him renew the world, bring souls to him, and be ready to say yes to whatever his call is on your life. So you are called, and you are called to create with God. This has been G2G with Pete Burak. We'll see you next time.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Have a suggestion for us? Drop us an email at podcast@shalomworld.org. Your donations help us bring incredible podcasts like these. A little goes a long way. Do consider making a donation today. shalomworld.org/donate. Follow @ShalomWorld Podcasts on Instagram to know when we're dropping the next episode. Head out, spread the word, and stay blessed.
Shalom World Podcasts is now available on all online platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and others.